The meeting lasted 11 minutes. I checked my watch when I sat down, and again when Director Garrett Finch closed his laptop and told me we were done. An hour before, Ryan Coulter stopped me in the hallway. "You seeing Garrett at 2?" he said. "I am." Heads up, his nephew toured the floor this morning. Garrett walked him through the traffic dashboard, introduced him to QA. He paused. "He didn't introduce him to you." I understood the shape of the afternoon before it happened. I had 3 things to do before 2 o'clock. Confirm 2 patent numbers, forward a file to my personal server, and return Bart Wellman's call from Callaway Retail. "What's the read on the load split?" Bart asked. "You'll be fine through December. The fall launch fits inside the ceiling." "Good, last thing I need is a repeat of March." "That won't happen." "I know it won't," he said, "because you'll be watching it." I didn't tell him I wouldn't be. At 2 o'clock, I walked into conference room B. "The board reviewed infrastructure overhead," Garrett said. "Traffic architecture at your level is a commodity now. Any competent engineer can maintain what's in place." "Has anyone mapped the full dependency stack?" I asked. "We're not here to debate this, Jack. The decision's been made." "Who's handling the ad routing layer?" He paused. "We'll brief the new team." "Is the new team familiar with variable load routing at peak window?" "We'll make sure they're up to speed." He had no idea what he was describing. "Compensation reverts to base through end of quarter. Severance calculated from there." "Understood," I said. What I did not tell him, what I had never volunteered in 4 years, was that the traffic optimization code running beneath every campaign Stratford had built since my second quarter was not the company's intellectual property. It was mine. I had developed the core algorithm 14 months before I ever walked into their Chicago offices. Personal research, late nights, a second-hand server rack, and a problem I'd been thinking through since graduate school. I had documentation, a working model, and a provisional patent filed 6 weeks before my start date. My employment contract covered work product developed on company time using company resources. The algorithm I built before I arrived was neither. "Honestly," Garrett said, "the hardest part of this transition will be updating the org chart." I let that occupy the room without responding. When I left, Nola Reyes caught me at the elevator. She looked at the box in my arms. "He actually did it," she said. "He did." "Jack, the routing layer, Garrett doesn't know how it's structured. He thinks it's just part of the platform." "He does think that," I said. "That's going to be a very expensive misunderstanding." "Yes," I said. What Garrett believed he had just done was remove a line item from overhead. What he had actually done was considerably more consequential. "My name is Jack Renshaw. My official title at Stratford Digital was Senior Traffic Architecture Engineer, a designation that sounded more procedural than it was. What it actually meant, I was the person who determined how millions of dollars in digital ad inventory moved through Stratford's platform without collapsing. Every campaign that ran, every impression delivered, every client who renewed, passed through infrastructure I had built or optimized or both. I had spent 4 years at Stratford. Before that, a master's program at Ohio State, where I wrote a thesis on dynamic load distribution that my advisor described as ahead of the questions the industry is currently asking. The industry caught up faster than either of us expected. The algorithm, the variable load router, or VLR, was the core function. Route high-volume ad traffic dynamically across distributed infrastructure, adjusting in real time based on load conditions, without degradation during peak demand. I spent 14 months on it before Stratford. The provisional patent was filed 6 weeks before my start date. I did not mention it to anyone at Stratford, not because I was hiding it, because no one asked. I had made sure every year since that the core routing layer ran through my VLR implementation, not positioning for leverage, because it was genuinely the best solution. The platform performed, clients renewed. Garrett received compliments in board meetings that traced back to a server rack in my Columbus apartment. He had no idea. 18 months into my time at Stratford, Callaway Retail had a minor load event during a campaign. Garrett called me in. "We need to tell them we're upgrading the system," he said. The infrastructure didn't fail, I said. The campaign parameters were set outside the model's tolerance. I don't need the technical breakdown, Jack. I need a message for the client. The message should be that it won't happen again. Can you guarantee that? If parameters stay within the routing model's ceiling, yes. I sent him 2 paragraphs. Bart Wellman replied within the hour. Garrett sent back, "Good, keep Callaway happy." Not a question about how, not curiosity about what the routing model was, just a result he expected to continue. That email sat in my archive for 3 years. What Garrett never understood was that the Callaway account didn't run through Stratford's standard client services. It ran through me. 3 years of direct contact, personal cell, quarterly calls. Callaway had an 8-figure annual budget, and a short list of people they trusted with it. My name was on that list. Stratford's platform was on it because my name was. Garrett had just removed my name from the building directory. He hadn't understood that the list didn't work that way. The week after the meeting, I cataloged everything Stratford depended on that had no documentation, no backup, no second name attached. 11 direct client relationships on my personal phone, nowhere in Stratford's CRM. 4 with renewal decisions inside 90 days. 17 internal process documents on my personal drive. 3 platform partner relationships the vendor team didn't know existed. And the VLR. The routing layer processing every impression Stratford delivered, owned entirely by me. I closed the document and called Nola. "How's the new team settling in?" "Riley starts Tuesday," she said. Riley was Garrett's nephew. Garrett asked me to explain the reporting layer. "What did you explain?" "The reporting layer, not the routing layer. He didn't ask about that." "No, he wouldn't." "Jack, Riley has a background in social media marketing, not infrastructure, not anything close to what the traffic system requires." "I know." "The Callaway fall launch is in 6 weeks. Who's handling the routing parameters?" "That," I said, "is an excellent question." What Nola didn't know was that the VLR required active maintenance every time a major campaign window was set. 30 minutes of parameter adjustment, calibrated to each client's load profile. The process was documented nowhere inside Stratford systems. That person no longer had a keycard. 3 days later, Bart Wellman called. I got an email from someone named Riley, introducing himself as my new contact. No mention of you. "Riley is the new point of contact for your account," I said. "Silence, what is Riley's background?" "Platform communications, digital marketing." "Jack." "Yes." "Our fall launch runs 8 million impressions over 3 days, with a peak Saturday morning that nearly broke the system 2 years ago. Who is maintaining the routing architecture?" "Stratford's internal team." "That's not what I asked." "No," I said, "it isn't. We have a contract review in 4 weeks." "I'm aware." "Are you going to be at that review?" "That depends on a conversation I haven't had yet." "Have it soon," he said. "Callaway doesn't transfer loyalty on an org chart update." After that call, I pulled up Bart's message history and read through 6 months of correspondence, looking for whether the relationship was functional or real. The relationship was entirely real, which meant it was entirely portable. 2 days later, I ran into Garrett in the lobby. "How's the transition treating you?" he asked. "I'm adjusting." Riley's been asking good questions, getting up to speed quickly. "What questions has he been asking?" "Platform questions, client relationship stuff." "Has he asked about the traffic routing layer?" "He'll get there, the system's stable. There's no fire to put out." "No," I said, "not yet." He moved past me without looking back. The system was stable because I had calibrated it 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks from now, stability would require someone who understood what they were maintaining. That person was not in the building. The VLR patent had a specific designation. Provisional application 63/847,291, filed 14 months before my Stratford start date. The IP attorney who filed it, Carla Austin, had reviewed my employment agreement twice. Your pre-employment work product is not covered by this agreement. I kept those emails in a folder at home. I was 9 days out when Nola called at 7:30 in the morning. Riley ran a manual override on the campaign scheduling queue. I sat up when, last night, trying to preload the Callaway parameters, the VLR kicked it back and threw an error code nobody recognizes. Did anyone call the documentation library? Jack, there is no documentation library. I ran the technical sequence in my head. Is the error still live? Yes, Riley tried to clear it twice. He needs to stop touching it. I told him that. He said he'd loop in QA. She stopped. The QA team doesn't have visibility into the VLR layer. Nobody does except me, and only partial. Does Garrett know about the error? Not yet. Riley hasn't escalated it. Nola, don't touch the queue. Log the timestamp and keep it. What are you going to do? Wait, I said, until Garrett asks a question he's never thought to ask before. That question arrived 4 days later. Garrett called my personal cell. We've got a technical situation. The campaign queue for Callaway is throwing errors. I need to understand what's happening with the routing layer. Which routing layer? A pause, the traffic routing, the main one. There are 4 routing layers. Which one is generating the error? Longer pause, I'll have to get back to you. The error code will tell you. What does it read? I don't have it in front of me. Get the error code and call me back. He called back in 8 minutes. That's a VLR integrity flag, I said. What does that mean? The routing layer detected an unauthorized modification and locked the affected parameters to prevent cascade failure. Silence, how do we clear it? The VLRS lock protocol requires authorization from the original configuration architect. Another silence. You're the original configuration architect. I am. So only you can clear this. The system was designed to protect campaign integrity. The lock exists because manual overrides can cause load distribution failure. Jack, the Callaway launches in 18 days. I know. We need this cleared. I understand that. Can you come in and clear it? I did not answer immediately. That depends on what we're describing as the terms of that engagement, I said. The silence was different, not processing, arriving. He had just understood that this was not a technical inconvenience. It was a negotiation, and he had walked in unprepared. What Garrett hadn't yet understood was the second layer. The VLR itself didn't belong to Stratford Digital. It belonged to me, and the lock wasn't just protecting Callaway's campaign. It was protecting intellectual property the company had been using for 4 years without knowing they didn't own it. I called Carla Austin that afternoon. The company's been running a platform built on my pre-employment IP for 4 years. No licensing agreement, no disclosure. Now they need access to resolve an operational issue. Have you made any representations about ownership since your separation? No. Have you provided documentation describing the VLR as company property? No, it was never discussed. Good, do you want to license it, or do you want it removed? I want what's fair for the work, for what it's actually worth. Do you have usage data, volume processed, revenue attributable? I have 4 years of it. Send it today. Nola called that evening. Garrett had a 3-hour closed-door meeting with the technical lead. Nobody came out looking comfortable. What did they say about the VLR? That it wasn't in the IP inventory. It isn't. The Callaway account manager called looking for you. Not Riley, not client services, they asked for you by name. Bart had told me Callaway didn't transfer loyalty on org charts. He hadn't been speaking theoretically. This wasn't the crisis yet. This was the architecture of it becoming visible. Carla called back 48 hours later. I've reviewed the usage data. 4 years of platform traffic through your VLR, cross-referenced against Stratford's reported revenue and renewal rates. The attributable value is not small. I know what the system does. We're not talking about a component they can swap out. We're talking about the core performance differentiator of their entire platform. Every client retained, every campaign that ran without failure, it traces back to this algorithm. What's the exposure on their side? Significant. 4 years of unlicensed commercial use of patented IP. If they've made representations to clients or investors about proprietary technology, that's a separate problem. I thought about Stratford's marketing materials. Phrases like proprietary traffic architecture. Yes, I said, they have. Then we proceed carefully. I'll draft an initial disclosure letter. One more thing. In the course of maintaining the VLR over 4 years, did you use company servers or resources to develop modifications? There were incremental refinements, calibration adjustments based on live traffic, nothing that altered the core architecture. Were those refinements made on company systems? Some of them. Silence. I need the specific log of what was modified, when, and on what systems. I'll get it to you. On the same day I was pulling those records, Garrett hired an IP attorney. Holbrook & Crane, a Chicago firm specializing in technology IP disputes. Nola called with the name. Meeting was this afternoon, 3 hours. Did anyone pull the original VLR implementation files? They tried. The files are encrypted. Nobody has the decryption key. No, they don't. Jack, Holbrook & Crane are going to find the patent filing. I know. And then Garrett is going to understand what he's been sitting on. That's correct. Can he argue it belongs to the company? I thought about the calibration logs, about the gap Carla had identified. There are arguments, none are strong, but they exist. Garrett called 3 days later. His tone was different. I've been advised to discuss the IP situation directly. The VLR patent. You filed it before your start date. Correct. Our counsel has identified questions around the calibration work during your employment. Work done on company systems. Your counsel should send those questions to my attorney. Jack, did you intend this from the beginning? It was the closest Garrett had come to asking me a real question. I intended to build the best possible traffic architecture for the platform, I said. I did that for 4 years. The IP situation is what it is because no one ever asked the questions that would have surfaced it. That's not intention. That's a gap in due diligence that existed on day one. Silence. That's a very precise answer, he said. I give precise answers to precise questions. Our counsel believes there's a licensing path forward. My attorney will respond to any formal proposal. The Callaway launches in 14 days, Jack. I know. If the VLR lock isn't cleared before that window. I know what happens, so does Callaway. Silence, you've spoken to Bart. Bart has called me, I haven't sought him out. What did he say? He said Callaway doesn't transfer loyalty on an org chart update. Long silence. I'll have our counsel contact your attorney today, he said. That evening, Carla called with the log analysis. The calibration records are clean. The modifications were parameter adjustments, inputs into the existing algorithm, not structural changes. The core IP is unambiguous. I exhaled, so we're clean. We're clean. Holbrook & Crane will test this anyway. They'll argue the calibration work constitutes derivative development. It doesn't hold under statute, but they'll argue it. Let them. Jack, the algorithm processed 412 million impressions for Callaway alone over 3 years. The performance differential is measurable. If Callaway's renewal is contingent on VLR quality performance, and Stratford can't deliver without a license, the account exposure is substantial. Bart understands what the system does. Does he understand the system isn't Stratford's anymore? Not yet, but he will. In 14 days, 8 million impressions were going to arrive at a system whose routing architecture was locked, unlicensed, and controlled by a person who no longer had a keycard. Garrett had hired good attorneys, but attorneys resolve IP disputes on timelines measured in months. The Callaway launch was measured in days. The gap between those timelines was where everything was going to happen. Holbrook & Crane sent their first communication on Thursday morning, 12 pages. Their argument: the VLRS calibration refinements constituted co-development under Illinois joint work doctrine. that my failure to disclose the patented hire represented material omission, and that the algorithm's commercial application had been so shaped by Stratford's environment that the original filing no longer represented the implemented technology. The joint work doctrine is the one they're betting on, Carla said. It's the least weak. How do we respond? With the logs, parameter inputs are not co-development. There's case law going back 15 years. They know that. This document is designed to create enough legal uncertainty that you settle before the Callaway window. What's our countermove? I send them a response that makes ownership completely unambiguous. Then we put a licensing proposal on the table with a number attached. What numbers? I want your input. What is fair use worth to you? The number needed to be accurate, grounded in what the VLR had delivered for Stratford's business over 4 years. Not punitive, not weak. Send me the revenue attribution analysis. I'll have a number by tonight. Garrett made his smart move on Friday. Nola called at 6. He went to Bart directly, flew to Callaway's regional office in Indianapolis this afternoon. I called Bart. He picked up on the second ring. Your director flew here to tell me the platform upgrade is on track and the fall launch will run without issues. What did you tell him? I told him I appreciated the visit. Then I asked him to walk me through the routing architecture for the Saturday peak window. What did he say? He said the technical team had it fully covered. He used the phrase fully covered 4 times in 8 minutes. That's accurate. I don't need accurate, I need functional. Jack. The man could not describe a single component of the system that handles my campaign traffic. I have 8 million impressions scheduled in 10 days and a peak window that nearly broke the architecture 2 years ago. I understand your concern. Jack, where are you in all of this? There's an IP matter under discussion between attorneys. How long does that take? Longer than 10 days. Silence, so the system my campaign depends on is in a legal dispute, and the person who built it no longer works there. That's an accurate summary. And Garrett flew here to tell me the opposite. He flew there to protect the account relationship. That's not nothing. It's the wrong execution. I need to know something directly. If the IP situation isn't resolved before the launch window, can the platform handle the load? I didn't answer immediately. Without the VLR routing layer actively maintained for that specific window, the system will process the initial load. The Saturday peak is where the risk sits. Define risk. Load distribution failure during peak demand. Campaign delivery degradation. Potentially significant impression loss during the highest value window. Long silence, how significant? The March event 2 years ago was partial degradation on a misconfigured parameter. Saturday morning on a full fall launch, without routing calibration, could be considerably worse. Send me whatever documentation you can share, not for me, for my team. I'll send it today. And Jack, whatever is happening between you and Stratford, don't let Callaway become collateral damage. That's not my intention. I know it isn't, that's why I'm still on this call. Carla called the next morning. Holbrook and Crane want to meet in person Monday. What shifted? Garrett, he's pushing them to compress the timeline. He wants a licensing agreement before the Callaway window. What did you tell them? That we're available Monday. Jack, a licensing agreement before the Callaway launch serves your interest too. If the window fails without the VLR, Callaway may leave entirely. If Callaway leaves, the licensing value drops. I've thought about that. Then you know Monday matters. What's your number going into the room? She told me. It was fair, precisely fair, grounded in the attribution analysis, 4-year usage volume, and comparable licensing benchmarks. Not punitive, not accommodating, accurate. One more thing. Riley ran another override attempt last night. I closed my eyes. What happened? Same result. VLR threw the same flag, but he corrupted a segment of the distribution matrix. It's separate from the VLR layer company infrastructure, but it's part of the delivery pathway. How bad? QA estimates 4 to 6 days to repair. Can they? Nola doesn't think so. The timeline was compressing from every direction. That evening, I checked the public-facing analytics dashboard, a transparency tool for enterprise clients showing aggregate platform performance. The numbers took me a moment to process. Platform traffic was down, significantly. The aggregate delivery rate was running at roughly 60% of the baseline I'd maintained through my last week. Within the VLR routing segments, the degradation was steeper. The decline started 4 days ago, the day after Riley's first override. The VLR lock hadn't caused this, but Riley's interference had disrupted the parameter calibration, and without active maintenance, the load distribution was drifting. The platform wasn't failing catastrophically. It was degrading, slowly, measurably, in ways an experienced engineer would recognize immediately. Garrett might not even be looking at it, but Bart Wellman's team would be. And if they were watching, the delivery rate dropped toward 60% with 9 days before their launch. Monday's meeting wasn't going to be a negotiation. It was going to be a reckoning. The Monday meeting was in Holbrook & Crane's Chicago office, 41st floor. Garrett was there, his general counsel, Walt Ackerfer, 2 attorneys from Holbrook & Crane, senior partner Diane Holt, and an associate who took notes. Diane Holt opened. "We appreciate the expedited timeline. Our client's operational situation makes speed a shared priority." "We agree on the timeline," Carla said. "We don't agree on the ownership question." "We've reviewed your response. The joint development argument is one we're prepared to litigate." "Over 9 days." A pause. "We're prepared to litigate it. The timeline creates practical considerations for both parties." "The practical consideration for my client," Carla said, "is that Stratford has been operating on unlicensed IP for 4 years. The practical consideration for your client is that the Callaway account depends on a system they don't own." She set a document on the table. "This is our licensing proposal." They read it. Garrett's expression didn't change. "The proposed rate," Diane Holt said, "is above market. With respect, there are no comparable licensing agreements at this performance level. The attribution data establishes what the VLR has delivered. The rate reflects that. You're pricing 4 years of retroactive use into a forward license. The rate reflects fair market value. If your client had licensed it from day one, this would be the rate." Garrett spoke for the first time. "Jack, did the work you did at Stratford, 4 years of building this platform, did that not count for something in how you're approaching this?" The room was quiet. "The 4 years counted for a great deal," I said. "The IP is what it is independent of that. You built something significant inside this platform." "I built something significant before this platform. The 4 years refined it. And that distinction is where we are. That distinction is exactly where we are." He sat back. The moment passed. The negotiation lasted 4 hours. Holbrook & Crane pushed back on the rate, term length, scope, and retroactive use. Carla held the rate, extended the term as a concession, narrowed the scope to current platform use, and took the retroactive question off the table in exchange for an acceleration clause at renewal. The initial term sheet was a framework, enough to allow emergency maintenance before the Callaway launch while the full contract was drafted. It was clean work. I called Nola from the car. "How's the Matrix repair going?" "They brought in a contractor this morning. He's been on it for 6 hours, says 3 days minimum. That puts us at Thursday. Best case, he's also working around Riley, who keeps trying to help. Riley needs to be removed from the system." "I've said that, Walt said that, the technical lead said that, Garrett said Riley is still learning the platform." I looked out at the Chicago traffic and said nothing. "The public dashboard, has Bart's team been watching it?" "His account manager called our main line twice today." She stopped. "The delivery rate on active campaigns is at 54% as of this afternoon. The degradation was accelerating. Has anyone attempted a manual recalibration?" "They tried this morning. The VLR lock rejected it. The framework agreement was initialed 3 hours ago. Send Walt the term sheet. The lock clears once he countersigns the emergency maintenance authorization." "How quickly can you be available?" "I can start tonight." A pause. "You don't have to do it tonight, Jack." I know, but the system is unwinding, and every hour it unwinds, the repair takes longer. I'll get you the counter-signature. Walt Ackerfer sent the countersigned authorization at 9:47 that evening. I opened the VLR configuration interface from my home system at 10. The lock cleared on the first authentication. I started with the Callaway parameters. Load profile, peak window timing, distribution thresholds. I worked methodically. 2 hours in, I found what Riley's override attempts had done. It was worse than described. The corrupted inputs had propagated further than the visible error suggested. The distribution matrix damage was downstream, a consequence, not the root cause. Riley had introduced bad data into the parameter feed, and the matrix degraded trying to process contradictory instructions. The contractor was repairing the wrong end of the problem. To fix it properly, someone needed to clean the parameter set first, then repair the matrix against corrected inputs. I wrote up a technical summary and sent it to Carla, Nola, and Walt at 12:43. Then I kept working. By 3 in the morning, the Callaway parameter set was clean. The VLR calibration was complete. The routing layer was stable. The distribution matrix was still broken, but now it was broken against a clean upstream, which meant the contractor could repair it correctly, which meant Thursday became achievable. I closed the interface and sat in the quiet. I was not angry. What I felt was something close to what my father had described after finishing a bridge repair that took longer than expected. He said it felt like the work felt, not good or bad, just done, and real and still standing. The Callaway Fall launch ran Thursday through Saturday in late October. I watched from my home office on the public dashboard, the way a structural engineer stands at a distance and watches a bridge carry its first full load after a repair. Thursday was clean. Friday was clean. Saturday morning arrived with the peak demand window I had been calibrating for across 3 years, and the system processed it without a single degradation event. 8 million impressions. The Saturday peak that had nearly broken the architecture 2 years ago moved through the VLR routing layer at full capacity, without a single delivery failure during the highest value 4 hours. The contractor had finished the matrix repair Wednesday evening. Nola supervised final validation. The system held. Bart called Saturday afternoon. Launch is clean. I saw. Saturday morning peak ran at 102% of projected delivery. That's never happened before. The calibration was tighter this cycle. A pause. Jack, what are you doing now? Managing a licensing agreement, talking to some people. What kind of people? The kind who have traffic architecture problems they don't have solutions for. Are any of those people in the market research space? Why? Because we're building an internal analytics platform. It's going to need serious routing architecture. I told my VP of technology I knew someone. Send me the technical brief. Already did. Check your personal email. He had sent it at 11 that morning, during the Saturday peak, while his campaign was running. I'll read it today. Good. For what it's worth, I never thought the platform was Stratford. I thought the platform was you. You said it clearly enough, every time you called my personal number. The formal licensing agreement was executed 22 days later. The retroactive use question was resolved through a one-time settlement Carla described as appropriate without being instructive. The forward license was structured on a per-impression basis with an annual floor and a performance adjustment clause. It exceeded baseline by an average of 23% in the first quarter. I did not attend the signing. I was in Columbus that week, meeting with the market research firm Bart had introduced me to. The VP's name was Lena Forsyth. She understood the system within 40 minutes. Why isn't this commercially licensed broadly? She said. This solves a problem that costs the industry significant money every year. It's been in use commercially for 4 years, just not broadly. She looked at me. Stratford Digital. Yes. I heard they had a near miss on a major client launch last month. They resolved it. How? Carefully, I said. She studied me. Are you licensing this independently now? I'm having conversations. Have this one seriously. We're not the only firm with this problem. 3 weeks after the licensing agreement was executed, Garrett called me for the last time. It was a Thursday evening. The board reviewed Q3 results. The licensing cost is going to show up as a significant line item against platform margin. I know. The board has questions about how a core technology asset was operating without a licensing agreement for 4 years. That's a reasonable question. Walt is preparing an internal review. I wanted to tell you directly. I appreciate that. A silence. I made an assessment about what your role was, about what was replaceable and what wasn't. You made the assessment the information available to you supported. Nobody had mapped what the role actually contained. It's substantially on me. Yes, I said, it is. Another silence. If I had asked the right questions in any of the 4 years before that meeting, would you have told me? I thought about that honestly. I would have answered the questions you asked. I never volunteered information that wasn't requested. That's not the same as concealment, but it's not nothing either. He was quiet. No, it isn't. That was all. No apology, no further analysis. Just a man who had made a significant mistake sitting with the precise shape of it. Good luck with the board review, I said. Thank you, Jack. He hung up. The Callaway account renewed with Stratford for 1 more year, a short-term extension while Bart's team built the internal platform. By spring, the work I was doing with Lena's firm and 3 others had grown into something requiring its own structure. I incorporated in February. The VLR became the foundation of a commercial licensing practice that, by year's end, was processing more impressions than Stratford's entire network. I did not announce any of that. The work expanded because the work was real. Nola left Stratford in the spring. She called me on her last day. What took you so long? I said. I wanted to see how the Matrix held up. It held up fine. I know. Are you hiring? Send me your resume. I already did, she said. Check your personal email. My father used to say that the best infrastructure is invisible. If people notice it, something has already gone wrong. I spent 4 years at Stratford being invisible in precisely the way he described, not because I was hiding, but because the work was functioning. What Garrett had never understood, what most organizations never understand about the people who carry them, is that invisibility is not the same as dispensability. In infrastructure, in relationships, in any system that depends on expertise too complex to observe from a distance, the most critical work is almost always the work that produces silence. Not absence. Silence. The sound a system makes when it is functioning precisely as designed. The moment Garrett made his assessment, he confused that silence for emptiness. It was the most expensive misreading of his career. It happens in organizations every day, in performance reviews and restructuring decisions. Whenever someone in authority looks at a person who has made their work invisible through competence and concludes that invisible means interchangeable. The load-bearing walls are rarely the ones with the most visible paint. This is corporate vault, the stories about the people no one watched closely enough until it was far too late. The ones who carried things no one bothered to map until the day they stopped carrying them.